Hey everyone, happy Friday, TGIF. Today I have another discussion with one of my favorites, Rich Durrani of CT, IT Expo, and TMC, and other organizations that I'm not even aware of. Rich, how are you?
Great. How are you doing, Evan?
I'm doing great. Happy Friday. We made it to Friday, and 40 days left until the 40th IT Expo, aka Tech Super Show down in Orlando, Florida. How is this even the
Fort Lauderdale.
40th?
I got to correct you on that. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Fort
it's Fort
Lauderdale.
Lauderdale. I always mix up those two, although Fort Lauderdale is way better than Orlando. I don't know what I'm thinking. No kids. That's the main benefit. But how is this even the 40th IT Expo? I mean, that just sounds extraordinary that
Well,
there's a
we
tech.
had two a year for a while, but then we decided to consolidate, and it started
Okay.
in San Diego, and then we had an East and a West. We decided that the Miami event was far and away the more successful one. And I say Miami, South Florida, because we've traditionally we've gone back and forth between Lauderdale and Miami, and we decided that that was a better home. There are a few reasons. Number one, February is a great time to be in Florida. Geographically, it attracts people from Europe, from South America, from the Caribbean,
Mhm.
from Canada, North America. We pretty much get everyone from around the world. We're a little light on Asia and Mexico, but other than that, it's incredible what a draw it is to be there at that time of the year. And then secondarily, and I think this is the most important for exhibitors, but also attendees. Budget cycles are typically uh, annual. They usually start with the beginning of the year, and it's time really to go and explore what you need to buy, what's out there. So the timing was right, the location was right, the draw was right, the customer feedback was right. So we now have one show, but we had two for a while, and that's how we have 40 in about, it's been about 24 years or so we've done the show.
Amazing, amazing history. I've been many times. It's one of my favorite events. Not least of which is because it's independent. It has all the entire tech community there in the enterprise and service provider. It's not just another vendor show, which are fun and have their place, but it's dominated by that vendor and their sort of ecosystem. You really cut across all verticals, disciplines, niches, including cybersecurity, which we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. We don't have an allegiance to any single vendor. We are as vendor agnostic as it gets. I mean, for example, there's an even co-located. We have an Astracon event, which is the
Mm-hmm.
Asterisk, like the user group, and it's the
Love it.
open source community, which we welcome. And traditionally, competitive events that are in the market are, they don't want to be associated with open source because they're
Mm-hmm.
non-commercial, and it cuts into their profitability. We've decided early on that we're the open access event. We're open to all vendors, we're open to all points of view, and we're open to all solutions because primarily our allegiance is to our attendees. We want them to come and we want them to go to the conferences, the keynotes in the exhibit hall, and we want them to be really understanding what's next, what's coming, what's important for them to implement today, allow them to talk to their peers, but also learn about the next few years, where they need to be to advance their career, to advance their company, and to hopefully excel in the market.
Yeah, and get educated. I love the educational tracks. Tons of analysts and media journalists and CXOs to learn from. Speaking of learning, let's dive into a particular topic, one near and dear to everyone's heart. Some of the top cybersecurity trends that are driving our thinking in 2023. And this is particularly relevant for IT Expo, right? Because you have a whole community of MSPs for security and vendors and others.
Yes, we'll have the vendor community, a number of cybersecurity vendors. I don't want to mention any because I'm going to leave someone out and upset someone, but there's, not only are there a lot, but new ones are signing by the hour, by the day. So new ones are coming on all the time. A lot of sessions, and then we are targeting with the education in the conferences enterprise. So companies, IT people need to come and learn, CTOs, CIOs, etc. should be coming to learn. The MSP should be coming to the sessions to learn about what to resell. And then the MSPs kind of cross over with carriers. A lot of the attendees of the show are telecommunications carriers, whether they're your large the traditional names that would provide cell phone service, but also a ton of regional carriers, Caribbean, Latin American carriers, European carriers. They all come. Why do they come? Because not only do they want to network with the existing cybersecurity vendors that are there, but they also want to find out what's next. For example, AI
Hmm.
is making such a huge push across so many different disciplines. We all know about Chat GTP or GPT that's come out in the last few months. It's really addictive, as Evan and I we've talked about a few times. But also, how does AI affect cybersecurity? How does it help you? What will it do to combat the people that are trying to break into your networks? Because believe it or not, they also are focusing on using AI to improve the way they hack into our systems. And let me just give you a simple example. Many of us, when we see a phishing email that has grammatical or spelling errors or
Mm.
that is not put together well, we know it's someone trying to hack in, and it's not really from the bank or from the
Mm.
whatever the e-commerce vendor is that it seems like it's from. That those days are gone now. The hackers can use AI to craft emails that are better than the ones that would come from the bank or from
Mm.
the e-commerce vendor. So as of the last couple months, our ability to discern a phishing email, and I say our, it's not just me and you. It's literally all the employees of everyone who's listening to this right now. Your employees, when they're impaired, and by impaired I mean if they're working when it's late or they're working when it's early and they haven't had their
Mm.
coffee, they had maybe a drink, they took some kind of painkiller, they took some kind of prescription medication that made them
Mm.
drowsy. They see an email from a bank or whatever it is that they think it is. They click on
Mm.
it, they put in their information. The next thing you know, passwords are out there. They've got malware downloaded on their computer. They're in your network. You've got ransomware. All your computers are locked up. Your operations are shut down for a period of days. How do you stop that? Well, you number one have to have the proper tools on the desktop. You have to have the right intrusion detection systems, anomaly detection systems set up, software. You also need to have training for your workers. You also need to have backups. And all those vendors will be at the IT Expo Tech Super Show, also MSP Expo, which is part of it.
Yeah, that's super exciting. And you also have to have, your cybersecurity staff, if you have one, CSO and et cetera, equipped with AI tools to manage, the network and the risks. And increasingly, AI is giving, the security staff superpowers, the kind of tools that can help them be more effective in their jobs. So you can't hire people these days, right? So, you have to do more with the staff you have or with an MSP. And AI is empowering, security operations and research and all kinds of things. So it's a really interesting time. I think the other trend that we're seeing around security, of course, is a continued hybrid and remote work, where the threat levels are off the charts once you get out of the traditional firewalls of the business or the enterprise, and there are all kinds of new devices and threats and broadband routers at home and opportunities for risk. I imagine that's a big topic at IT Expo as well.
Absolutely, it is. It is, and like you said, it just amplifies the problem. It makes it worse. A lot of times, the devices that people use at home are not
Mm.
necessarily sanctioned devices. They're shared devices. Even if they're not supposed to be shared, they become shared, and it presents opportunities for software to get downloaded, malware to be downloaded. For example, keystroke logging software can
Mhm.
be downloaded. Simply stated, it's software that allows a hacker to see all the keystrokes that you're typing in, so they can see that your password, they can see your username, and with that information, they can get into the corporate network. And they're only able to do that because maybe someone else used that same computer and they infected it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're all sharing devices at home, and indeed, when your employees start using their own browser or multiple browsers, you never know if their machine is updated and current or what they're using exactly. So it's a real challenge, supporting this new world of remote work from a security standpoint.
And Evan,
Um,
who wouldn't want to share the 6 or 7 monitors behind you? I mean, I want to drive to New Hampshire, wherever you are right now, just to get on that
well,
computer.
I put this up in ode to you because you're not just a techie anymore. You're officially an investment banker. So do you trade as well? Do you have this is of course a green screen, so it's just for fun. But do you do any trading, or is it just advice that you're
No,
giving
it's just
companies?
I help buy and sell companies and raise capital. I'm not
So
doing any trading.
it's
No money
advisory
management.
work. Okay.
Pardon? Yeah,
Well,
right. No money management, and no, it's not something exciting for me. It's interesting. It's another area where AI is just getting better and better at stock picking and allocating money for people. So at some
yeah,
point, we're probably going to see the comparison of AI systems versus humans to see which one outperforms. And I'd be surprised if it's the humans.
yeah, it's going to be an interesting ride. The other thing we're seeing at IT Expo, of course, is the opportunity and the challenges with IoT. I mean, whether it's CES this week and our smart home devices, or within the industrial, factory or hospital context, all of these connected devices have tremendous opportunity for good. And in a hospital setting, it's about saving lives and wearables and monitoring and patient monitoring and remote monitoring. But it opens doors for security threats as well. Um, what say you?
There's an entire group of events that are
Mm-hmm.
co-located as part of the Tech Super Show. Thanks for mentioning it. From IoT evolution, there's an industrial IoT event, intelligent uh, edge event, smart city event, and there's also a 5G and a 6G expo. And there's obviously overlap there, but the point is that in those sessions, and I would advise people to consider going to those sessions to learn. The devices, as you've said, are extremely vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
to attack. They don't have they don't have the same level of I would say testing or the same
Mm-hmm.
level of use within a company. A lot of these IoT devices are relatively new and they haven't been out in the field long enough so that they can be adequately protected or defended from the attacks. And so hackers have used IoT devices in the past and made them into zombies to launch denial
Mm-hmm.
of service attacks on other organizations, but they've also used hacks to get into them to monitor what's happening. They can also use them to disrupt an operation. They can use them to get into the IT systems, which has happened via industrial control systems in the past, where hackers have gotten into an industrial control system. From there, they've hacked into an IT system. So unfortunately, everything's interconnected. So you have to look at every part of your organization to ensure that it is as protected as it can be. Because the moment there's one opening, you're in trouble if a hacker finds out about it.
Yeah, and maybe a lot of these fancy endpoints devices are made by, like, lesser known companies. Are often made in China. The software is often, frankly, pretty crappy, and hasn't been thoroughly tested, as you say. So beware of rogue IoT, particularly in your home. It's a real can of worms as far as bringing devices not just into the business but in the home or your car. You never quite know what you're getting into. The other thing we're seeing, of course, in this crypto winter is that despite crypto crashing and kind of going out of favor, it remains just a huge vulnerability. And the frauds and scams and cyber attacks and shenanigans that go on with crypto wallets and accounts is just stunning. Are you still buying, holding your crypto?
So I'm not an active crypto
Hmm.
trader. I mean, I'm if you look me up, actually, I'm the person that I recommended people within my company buy Bitcoin, and then I
Hmm.
wrote an article about it about a year and a half later. And I didn't realize at the time when I recommended it, it was at 10. And then when I wrote the article about it, it was at 121. So those were the price points at which I told other people to buy cryptocurrency or just Bitcoin. Actually, I don't know that I'm a big believer in the hundreds or thousands of cryptocurrencies that get launched or were getting launched all the time for obvious reasons that we are aware of now. I mean, there's only so much market absorption of all of that. But I thought Bitcoin at the time was a good idea. But getting back to the hacks, yeah, there have been billions of dollars of hacks. People's wallets, the exchanges have gotten hacked, and we have an event called the blockchain event, which is co-located with the Tech Super Show, and we intentionally early on decided that we were not going to go down the route of cryptocurrency in terms of becoming excessively focused on cryptocurrency. We wanted to focus on the business uses of blockchain because we thought
Hmm.
for a business oriented event that made more sense for us. And I always knew there was a level of, let's just say, I always eyed all these cryptocurrencies with a little bit of suspicion just because I knew at some point there's going to be saturation and have things have to consolidate, and that happened once, and now it's happened twice. But it doesn't mean that blockchain doesn't have a great place within technology, within companies. I mean, just a simple example of blockchain, which is probably the the best. Maybe I'll give you two quick ones. Are in shipping and transportation, where there's just so many documents and there's just so much back and forth with the documents that it really slows down and makes the whole process of transportation, shipping, logistics very, very inefficient. So blockchain, because it's immutable and it's right once, you can't mess with it, and everyone has access to it. It allows a level of transparency and a level of trust that you formerly had only with paper. And not that the paper had as much transparency, but at least you had a
Hmm.
level of trust. So that's a great application for blockchain, and certainly it will continue to be. But also things like real estate is another great example. Titles, real estate. Anytime you have a very paper-oriented business where you need immutability, you need it to be secure. Blockchain can be very, very helpful, and so I think those are two examples. And expect a focus on just business blockchain. There'll be some I'm sure there'll be some crypto discussion in these sessions. Interestingly, in one of the events, I was in one of the blockchain events, maybe from 7 or 8 years ago. They were first discussing how these cryptocurrencies are actually securities. And this was before I was a banker. I didn't really understand what that meant as well as I do now. But really, a lot of these cryptocurrencies are going to soon be ruled that they're either commodities or they're securities. And once that happens, there's a whole regulatory regime that comes around the trading of them, which changes things dramatically. So it won't be so simple to buy and sell them. It'll be like buying and selling a stock. Anyway, the point is that come to the show, learn about how blockchain can enhance your business while also learning about the benefits of cybersecurity and IoT, etc.
That's awesome. Can't wait. And of course, I'll be there in many of those sessions. One thing you know a lot about, as you just mentioned, was regulatory frameworks, compliance, and the increasing pressure on organizations to comply really at the end of a gun in terms of fines and other things they may receive, particularly in finance and banking and industries that are highly regulated. Now, you have firsthand perspective because you are now an investment banker, so you've been through the whole ringer on compliance and other regulations. Um, Tell us about that experience of becoming a regulated professional.
I can tell you, it's really, really interesting because being in tech, and being in media, you have your First Amendment protections. It's a world where you can do anything, you can say anything, and I've seen it over the years. I mean, I've seen different people saying things. I mean, just I'll take an example of like a Howard Stern, right, or a shock
Yeah.
jock genre, where people say things and they would get attention and they would
Hmm.
drive their um their reach, and that turned into, on the internet, clickbait. Now that I'm a regulated representative, as is called, every I have to be very careful. I can't make a recommendation on a stock to someone unless I've done extensive research on who they are, how much money they have, what's their long term goal. In other words, I have to make sure that I am giving them advice which is suitable for them, right? So, for even if I think an investment is the best investment in the world, I cannot just blanket tell everyone about it. I have to make sure it's suitable. It may be suitable for everyone, but I still have to do that analysis. So I'm really not, I mean, that's I'm not telling people what stocks to buy, but certainly I'm raising capital for tech companies. So yeah, that kind of comes in, but I mean, it's not, a lot of these rules were designed after the stock market crash in 1933, 34. All these rules came out to protect from another crash. So they're really good rules. They add a lot of safety and security to the market. And I wonder if the average person realizes just how much regulation there is in the market on the financial side to really protect investors from getting harmed. I think it's really a positive. It's in a group called FINRA. It's a
Hmm.
self-regulatory organization. It's under the SEC, and so basically they police us to make sure that we're ethical. Like, we have to be very careful. Like, for example, if there's a pitch deck I'm involved in putting out there, I can't say that this company is the best at something, even if they are the best and I can prove it. I would be better off saying it's one of the best and then still proving why it's one of the best with a footnote at the bottom showing a third party survey or research. Whereas if you're just an average, CEO of a startup, you can go out and say, "Oh, I'm the best. I'm the best." To some degree, it puts a deck that I designed at a disadvantage to investors when it goes out to investors. But the reality is, when they see all those footnotes and they see all of the backup of the statements that we make, they have a level of comfort that they can understand that this thing has been vetted. So in other words, we do another level of vetting. Why is that important? Well, without pointing fingers at any VCs, we just saw what happened with Sam Bankman-Fried and
Mm,
FTX.
mm.
There was a level of due diligence, whatever it was. Well, no one's going to know exactly what it was, but whatever it was not enough. And I've heard that there was no board. I've heard there was a board. Whatever that board did, it was not enough. I heard there was a CFO. I heard there was no CFO. If there was a CFO, it was not the right CFO, or it was just not a good CFO. The point is, the due diligence is actually done by investment bankers to a level that is pretty significant. It's not perfect. No due diligence is perfect, but basically, by asking questions of these VCs, and especially me with my media background, I've been in 10,000 interviews in my life,
Mm.
whether it's executives and VPs of marketing. I get a good sense on a company, what they're doing, what they're not doing. Does it make sense what they're doing? Does it make sense what they're saying? A
Mm.
lot of times it doesn't make sense to me, so I won't take on a client because I don't believe,
Mm.
I believe there's something fishy, and so that protects people. And you know what? I actually think to some degree it couldn't hurt to bring that into not just tech but into business. To some
Yeah,
degree.
a healthy dose of reality and skepticism, like we've always had, is a good thing. Speaking of risk, another one of the top trends that I think we're seeing out there is cybersecurity insurance. I feel I have a lot of insurance, life insurance, car insurance, home insurance, but not cybersecurity insurance. Are you secured against cyber attacks?
We actually, yeah, our company is,
Oh.
but it's a big problem. I can tell you, what's happening is the rates for cybersecurity are skyrocketing. Number
Hmm.
one. Number two, what the cyber insurance companies are going to protect against is becoming narrower and narrower every single year. That's number two. Number three, they generally will not protect you against acts of war, and more cybersecurity is getting classified as an act of war. For example, there was an attack called NotPetya, which was launched
Hmm.
by Russia maybe 5, 6 years ago against Ukraine, the financial departments within Ukrainian
Hmm.
companies. And I did some analysis at the time. It was either 10 or $11 billion worth of damage that
Wow.
was mentioned just on company reports, quarterly reports, and annual reports that they put out publicly. That doesn't even, God knows how many companies didn't report. So a tremendous amount of damage. All Russia did was they took a piece of ransomware software where, and ransomware, it usually will encrypt everything on your network and then give you a key if you pay them, and then you can unencrypt it. They basically encrypted it with no key. So basically,
Oh,
it was just they wiped everything out. The
wow.
point is that became a huge point of litigation as to, is that an act of war because it was Russia, or is it a cyber attack? And it may be an appeal. I don't remember exactly where it is. I don't know day to day how that case worked out, but I can tell you there was a legal fight for many years, just trying to get, for the company trying to get paid from the cyber insurance companies. What does that tell us in general? It's better to have it and not need it. And so you don't want to rely on your cyber insurance. And if you do rely on your cyber insurance, at some point you're not going to be cyber insurable, or the rates are going to just be so incredibly
Mm,
high at that
mm,
point that you're going to not only have to pay so much money, but then at some point you're going to say, wow, well, we really should start focusing on becoming more secure. So now you've got to spend double or triple the amount that you would have, or more. And the other issue that you have is that once a hacker gets in, there is a chance, a potential for them to get back in again. They do hit the same target again, unless you wipe everything and start over, hoping that you wiped from the point before they got in.
mm.
So it's not easy. You don't want to rely on insurance. You should have it. I wouldn't say anything about it bad about insurance, but please, for God's sake, you don't want it. You want to do your training. You want to have the right software, endpoint protection, anomaly detection. You want to have a security operations center 24 hours a day are monitoring things. Because if you're home and all of a sudden you get hacked, what are you going to do about it? You need a SOC there that will help you. And a lot of MSPs will offer a SOC service. There are companies that will be exhibiting at MSP Expo. They'll provide a SOC service, which they'll white label to MSPs, so MSPs can provide the service. And so this third party, 3 a.m. on a Sunday, if your client gets hacked, they'll remediate the hack to minimize the damage. And then anomaly detection. What's anomaly detection? Well, AI's, it's pretty good at this point. We've seen how good it's gotten in the last few months, but it'll tell, for example, it'll see if in Romania all of a sudden a large amount of data is being sent to Romania and you don't have any workers in Romania.
Mm,
You've never had an issue in Romania. You don't have anything in Romania, but all of a
mhm.
sudden that's the country. And I'm sorry to pick on Romania, but
Yeah, I
that
was
country
gonna say.
starts sucking out all your data.
Yeah.
You're going to get an alert. You're going to get something that may shut down that data flow. And if you didn't have AI, how, there's no way for you to know that that's an issue. Or let's say at 3 in the morning or 5 in the morning, all of a sudden a large data flow is going wherever it's going. And that's unusual for your company. You'll be notified, it'll shut things down. And that's just a little bit of the technology that's out there that companies really need to consider, because again, cyber insurance alone, great to have, but again, you don't want to rely on it.
Yeah, sort of like life insurance. You really don't want to use it.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
uh, and finally, last but not least, is education awareness is becoming so important. I mean, we lack cybersecurity talent. We can't train people fast enough. We can't educate people fast enough. Certainly, the typical institutions of higher learning don't really even train for cybersecurity expertise. And part of IT Expo, I think, is that learning from peers and networking and the sessions and chatting with others in the space, right?
Absolutely. And also, there are companies that will help you with awareness training.
Mm-hmm.
I personally believe that if you're not doing security awareness training 2 to 3 times a year with your team, and that's, if your team's 20 or more people, you have to do it. And the reason you have to do it is because one click can shut down your organization. And okay,
Mm-hmm.
yes, let's say you have backups, fantastic, but you're not necessarily going to know when the hack took place. You may have to wipe out a week's worth of work. So that's 20 people, a week's worth of work. You start doing the math on that. If the average weighted salary is $80,000 in one week, you're talking about a significant amount of work lost, and it could be money lost, it could be customer orders lost, you could lose customers down the line. But more importantly, or as importantly, you also, now that you've had a breach, you've got to notify customers. So your customers need to be told, oh, by the way, we just had a breach. Now, what does that do for your customer relationships? Is there a lack of trust or a loss of trust? The odds are there will be a loss of trust. And unfortunately, many small businesses are just wiped out from cyber attacks. They get hit and they don't recover. They have to shut down. I know of a company that had between 150 and 200 workers personally in the New York area near Westchester that they did have a breach, and there was a very, very successful organization, but within a couple of months they shut down because their biggest customers
Mm.
lost confidence, and when those customers pulled, it was over for the company, and all those people lost their jobs, and it was a viable business that's now gone. So
Wow.
as
What a way to end on that happy note. Um,
the happy note is come to the show, protect yourself. And, I don't want
yes.
this to be too self-serving. Just become more aware of cybersecurity. Protect your
Yeah.
organization. Even if you're not able to come to MSP Expo, IT Expo, got it. We understand. Stay up to date. And if you protect yourself, again, it's kind of like if you I happen to have a one of those security cameras on the front of my
Right.
house, and I get the alerts of the neighborhood and what's happening in the neighborhood. And at least once a week, I get an alert: caution, person is in the neighborhood opening door handles.
Wow.
Why are they opening
Wow.
door handles, Evan?
Oh, delivering ice cream and cake. They're there like Santa Claus. They're there. Yeah, I imagine that's a ring system. I love my ring.
I'm trying to keep this as non-commercial as possible. It is a ring system, since you mentioned it. Jamie Siminoff, who founded, who by the way keynoted IT Expo, I think 4 times. He
Oh
may be
wow.
one of our top keynoters. He was there 4 times with a few different companies, and so we really love Jamie. But long story short, they are trying to open. They're trying to find an open car door. They're
Mm.
trying to find a door that's open, and when they find an open car door, they don't necessarily need to break in. They just want to find one that's open, and that is the best analogy for cybersecurity I can think of.
Mm.
If your company is like a car, you need to keep it locked,
Mm.
and the cyber criminal will just go until they find the car door that is unlocked. So for those people that are listening, get educated on cybersecurity. Whether you come to IT Expo or another event, go to the event, learn, and become the locked door. Make your company the locked car. Because if you're not a locked car, someone who's opening doors is going to get in. It's a lot easier to check for open doors on the internet than it is to drive to my neighborhood at 3 in the morning when it's cold in the winter in Connecticut. So it's really easy for them to do it.
Speaking of a place that won't be cold, head to Fort Lauderdale. 40 days. There's plenty of time for folks to make their travel arrangements and get down there, get their team there, or even sponsor the event if you happen to be on the vendor provider side. Well, thanks so much, Rich, for joining. We have next meeting now to head to. But before we go, maybe Friday we're going to relax and chill. And any streaming shows you're excited to catch up on, or podcasts, or God forbid books you're reading. What's on the media front for you
So,
this
so
weekend?
Evan, you know what? All right. So I'm going to tell you some personal stuff. I don't normally divulge this, but the last show I got hooked on was Miss Maisel. I think it was. It was like
Oh
a
my
few years
goodness.
ago, and then I kind of lost interest in it. But I remember how hooked I was on it. I think the same thing happened to me with Breaking Bad. Got really, really hooked. So I decided I wasn't going to do that ever
Hmm.
again. But last week, I've been hearing so much about Wednesday that I said, okay, let me find out about this Wednesday movie, only to find out it was a series. I didn't know it was a series. I got addicted to that, and I had to watch it. I binged it over 2 days. I thought it was awesome. If you have you seen it?
No, I don't. I haven't even heard of it. Wednesday. Okay, well, I
Yeah,
will
it's
check out.
Wednesday Adams from the Adams Family,
Oh, I see. Okay, very fun.
and I thought it was really well done. I think the parents were miscast. Not they, other than the parents being miscast, I'd say it was probably a nine out
Well,
of
that's
nine
fun.
out
Well,
of 10.
that's about as far from cybersecurity as you can get. One I'd recommend for you and the viewers that I started binging yesterday was the new Madoff documentary on Netflix. It's a 4 or 5 part series, and I was just glued to the screen. I mean, we've all heard the story and have vague recollections, but this sort of reenactment as well as rehashing of the whole story, I had 90% of the details. I had no idea, and this is right up in your neck of the woods in terms of finance
Thank
and
you.
hedge funds.
What was
No.
that one called, Evan? What's that one called?
It's the Bernie Madoff, the
Okay.
Bernie Madoff story,
All
and
right, I'll check
it's
that one
on
out.
Netflix. Yeah, really interesting. Kind of ties into a little bit what we're talking about around fraud and deception and other areas, but just a story of a legendary story, even considering SBX and SBF and FTX and the other scams that continue. All right, well, we'll see you next time. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, viewers,
Thank
and
you.
have a great weekend, everyone.
You too. Yeah. Bye, everyone. Thank you. See you at the show.